Hello, this is Mike Cooper in North Carolina. Welcome to my voiceover studio. Today I'm going to be taking a look at the Isovox 2, which is a new version of Isovox's portable vocal and voiceover booth, which they very kindly sent me for review purposes. The deal is, in the interest of transparency, I get to keep the unit in exchange for doing the review, but I have promised that my review will be impartial and fair, and that I'll say the things that I like as well as the things that I might not like as we go along. At this point I haven't tested the unit, so we're going to be on this journey together and we'll see how it sounds. I'll put it through its paces in a couple of different locations. We'll see what it sounds like in a room like this which is treated but where there might be outside noise coming in, so I'll open up the windows and doors so the outside noise can come in. Isovox have asked me to test how well the unit isolates you from the noise that's coming into the thing. And then the other thing, which I think will probably be of more interest to a lot of voiceover artists, is what's the sound absorption like? We're going to take it into a very reflective room, the room that we use as our home gym here, which is covered in mirrors and hard surfaces, and see how much reflected sound comes back off those walls and whether you could get away with using it in something like a garage or a hotel room where you might not have that acoustic treatment on the walls. I'll use the Neumann TLM193, which is my standard microphone here in the booth. The Isovox 2 won't work if you're using a shotgun mic. The way it's set up is that we'll take a condenser mic, a studio condenser that stands in front of you. So that's the mic I'll be using. And then to get the audio in, I'll be using this, which is a MicPort Pro, which is a unit that I've had for a number of years. Works really well as an on-the-road audio interface. It connects on USB at one end, and it has an XLR on the other end that you can connect the mic into. At the moment, I'm just recording straight into my iPhone, which is why this audio doesn't sound that great. Let's see how we get on. The Isovox 2. So here it is in the room, and the first thing that you're probably going to notice is it is a bit of a beast. Whether you were able to tell that when you looked at the information on Isovox's website or not, I'm not sure. But certainly when you get it home and you unpack it and you zip it all together, you'll notice that the build quality is really good, but it is a bit big. I'm about 5'8", and the whole idea of this unit is that you stand with your head inside it. So you're going to need a few inches of clearance on top of that. You're going to need at least 6 foot if you're 5'8", or probably, a little bit more if you're taller. This front panel here, or back panel, depending on the way you look at it, lifts up. You step in, and that's where you do your work. The key thing about this unit compared to just about everything else that I've seen of this type is that back panel. So instead of just being surrounded on two sides or with a curve on the front, you've got something behind you as well to mop up that reflected sound. Now when I put my head in there, it does sound a little bit boxy. It's going to be really interesting to see how that translates into what it sounds like on a recording with a proper microphone. If you don't have the room for a generous sized fridge freezer, then you probably don't have the room for this, because it's standing on a speaker stand, a big substantial speaker stand which they supply with the unit. It arrives a couple of days before, or it did in my case, and then the whole thing just lifts onto the top of that speaker stand and supports it while you're using it. The sides can be zipped, so you can lift one side up if you want to get pictures or whatever, or for vanity purposes. But for most people, and to most intents and purposes, you're going to be using it in this way, with all four sides down, so that you get the best sound treatment. Next thing I'm going to do is connect my microphone. We'll keep it in here in the studio, so that you can hear how it sounds in a good room before we take it and put it through its paces elsewhere. So then, here's the setup. Lift the flap, and inside I've put my Neumann TLM193. They provide this very nice little Osram LED lighting kit, which just hangs in there and works off a couple of batteries. Your XLR cable comes up through the floor of the unit there, and that's where your microphone stands. You have room in here if you wanted to prop up your script or use an iPad. You wouldn't have room in here for a laptop, so that might be a concern for you if you're somebody who wanted to use your laptop and record on the same machine that you're reading your script from. There isn't a huge amount of room here to do that kind of thing. You've probably got 6 or 7 inches either side of the mic cable there, but an iPad or a phone would be absolutely fine. Right then, let's get into testing this thing out. And we're going to start here in my studio, which is an acoustically treated space. You might not think that listening to what you're listening to at the moment, but remember, I'm recording into the iPhone. It doesn't have a great mic, and because of the constraints on space in this room, the iPhone's right in front of a huge window. So you're going to hear a little bit more reflection when I'm talking to you now than you're going to hear when I get in here. I have gone to the Edge Studios website and I have my practice script available. There are hundreds of scripts available on the Edge website. Just search for Edge Studio scripts and you'll find more than you could ever know what to do with. And I'm going to do this on my iPad and take that into the Isovox 2. I think it will be a good fit and it will sit quite neatly to the side of my microphone there. So let's give it a try. I'm recording into Twisted Wave in the background over there on my desktop computer. No need to get Pro Tools involved. It's a bit overkill for something like this. And so this first test is going to be to see what the sound of the Isovox is in a room that doesn't have a lot of reflected sound. Let's try it out. So, as I said, there is room for my iPad to the left of the microphone. How does it actually sound when I try voicing a script? Here we go. Confused about choosing cable or a dish? Don't be. ATT Broadband gives you more. Go with cable and get up to 230 channels on 2 TVs for only $39.95 a month. Plus, get free cinema, the movie channel, and free professional installation on any cable TV package. Call 1-800-CABLE-ME today. So my initial impression on listening back to that clip is it actually sounds pretty good. Very little in terms of reflected sound, although that is making it sound ever so slightly boxy to my ears, and there does seem to be a bit of a bass tip-up going on there. Nothing that you couldn't EQ out, of course. You might just need to take a little bit of that low frequency out, maybe around the sort of 100 to 200 hertz, and that would probably make it sound pretty sweet. The next thing I'm going to try doing is opening up the windows and doors in this room and seeing what that's like. So here we go with that. I have 2 sliding patio doors here on this room and a window over here. And because of where I live, we have a creek that runs past the house, which you'll hear. We also have some chickens and things wandering around and a rooster. So this is fairly reasonable ambient noise. I'm going to try recording again and see how much of that ambient noise is taken out by the Isovox 2. So then, how much of that outside noise are you hearing now? I can hear the creek rushing, I can hear our wind chimes up on the deck upstairs, but it's noticeably quieter than when I'm in the room by itself. And if I lift this back flap, you'll hear a little bit more of that. What would it sound like on an actual voiceover recording? Well, it would sound like this. Welcome to the Clarence family. It's our objective to provide you with a warm and exciting environment filled with opportunity and growth. We attribute the success of the company to our commitment to excellence and our commitment to people. This presentation will serve as a guide for all general information to assist its employees. Okay, so it's not cutting out a huge amount of the external sound, but then I wouldn't particularly expect it to. I mean, there is the whole of the underneath of the unit, which doesn't have any sound isolation whatsoever. So it's doing a pretty good job at keeping stuff out, but I wouldn't necessarily rate it. I'm going to try one more thing though. I'm going to take it up to our main living room where we have a fish tank that has quite an intrusive pump and see what that sounds like. So let's go upstairs. So here we are now inside the house. Not everybody in North Carolina lives in a log cabin, but we do, so there you go. And this isn't a test I would particularly have thought to do myself, but the guys at Isovox were keen that I did. The main culprit for sound noise in this room is this fish tank behind me, which has quite a loud filter pump. Now, personally, I'm less interested in how well the Isovox isolates sound coming from outside than I am in how it can mop up sound that's been generated inside. I wouldn't particularly expect a unit like this to have great sound isolation from outside noise. Don't forget, people spend a lot of money and a lot of time trying to isolate their studios from either mechanical or transmitted noise that's coming from outside the booth. So this thing, with a big hole in the bottom of it, probably isn't going to make a lot of difference, but we'll give it a try and see what it sounds like. And this time around you can really see what this thing looks like and how you work with it. So I've stepped into it and closed the flap behind me, and now here I am at my normal voicing distance, about 8 to 10 inches. The mic a couple of inches above my mouth and just offset to an angle. I'm not using a pop filter or anything in this instance. So it's going to be interesting to see how much of that outside noise gets isolated. I'm not expecting great things, but you can be the judge. This is being recorded through the Centrance Mic Port Pro directly into Twisted Wave, and this is what you could expect to hear if you were using it in a room where there was some significant sound, and this is what you could expect it to isolate. So that's our last but one test. Next thing I'm going to do, this is the big one for me, is I'm going to take it down into a room where there's a lot of reflected sound. We have a converted space in our garage here where we have mirrors, a lot of gym equipment, no soft furnishings, no curtains, no nothing that would really absorb sound. I'm going to take it down there and see what it would sound like in probably one of the worst environments you could expect to record voiceovers in, and we'll see how it does. Right then, on to our final test, and as you can already hear, this room is a really unforgiving environment. This is the room that we use for our home gym. We're quite a way out of the city, so getting to a gym and back on a regular basis just doesn't work for us, so we built this. As you can see, there are mirrors, there are hard surfaces, there's very little, if anything, in here that's going to be absorbent and will help with sound. If you had a room like this and you needed to record a voiceover, you'd pretty much be onto a non-starter, or you'd end up sounding like you're in a bathroom. So let's see how the Isovox 2 does with this kind of environment. And what we learned on that last test, although I didn't expect great things of it, is going to come into play here as well. There are two elements to making a room or a booth sound good. One is stopping outside noise coming in, and the second part is stopping noise from reverberating around inside and being picked back up on the mic. Anything that I do in here is going to reflect off these walls, so anything that makes it out of the Isovox 2 while I'm recording is going to bounce around, and it's going to be down to the sound isolation abilities of the unit to stop that getting back in. I'm going to be really interested to see how this works, because for me this is really the litmus test. This is a unit that I would take on the road with me. It would be something that would help me avoid having to do things like build a pillow fort in a hotel, which is something that a lot of us end up doing from time to time. And that's really where I see its main application for voice talent. Let's give it a go and see what it sounds like in a really unforgiving room. So here we are inside, and certainly listening for myself, I can hear some of the sound reflections from outside, but it doesn't sound too bad at all. Let's read a bit of script so you can make a better judgment. It's a magical time to take your little characters. Is your living room a living storybook? Is there a princess on your couch who looks a lot like your little girl? Or a little beast roaring through the room? I obviously can't read. I talk for a living. But there you are, you get the idea of what this sounds like. I do hear some reflected sound coming from outside, but to my ears it's at such a low level that I'm not sure it's going to be a problem. I'll be really interested to listen back and see how this sounds when I listen on proper speakers in an isolated, treated room upstairs. So there you have it then, the Isovox 2. I've just come back up to the studio and listened back to those clips that we recorded, and I have to say I'm pretty impressed. I don't expect any unit like this to work miracles, and I have owned a number of reflection filters. I had something at one point called the mic thing, which all did a little bit of what this unit does, but I don't think any of them did it quite so well. So what are the pros and cons? Well, first up, that last test that we did down in the gym I think was really unfair. It's unlikely that you would really want to be recording in a room that has that much sound reflection, that sounds that live, and expect to get good results. That said, I think the results that we got weren't bad at all. And if you compare that to the results that we got recording here in the treated room at the start, you start to get an idea of what it would sound like in a bedroom, in a hotel room, or in somewhere where you'd got some soft furnishings, curtains and things to mop up some sound. I think it would be pretty good. So it's a good sounding unit, it's really well built, and as long as you've got the space for it, then I think it's a good bet. My reservations with it are really more around its portability. You can certainly unzip it, plaque it all flat and take it with you on the road, but at this stage that's a better proposition if you're driving somewhere. So if you're going to go and visit parents or friends for the weekend and you've got room for it in the car, either fully assembled, which would be my preference, or folded down flat, then you can certainly do that. If you were going to take it on a plane, then you have a couple of challenges. First of all, you're going to need a bag or a case that's big enough to take it. And the other thing is you're going to need to transport the speaker stand that it comes with. Now, Isovox have told me that they're currently working on a travel kit, and I hope to have one of those to take a look at in the next couple of months. But for now, you're going to need to find a suitcase that's big enough to take it, and consider that as checked baggage and extra weight, of course. What are my other reservations? Well, there is nowhere in there that you could put anything larger than an iPad. So for somebody like me who likes to see what I'm recording and to work with it right in front of me, this isn't going to be a solution for that. If you're used to working off paper, which could be a challenge if you're working in a hotel or on the road, or if you have an iPad or a phone that you can prop up next to it, that's really not an issue. The final thing comes down to the kind of microphone that it will take. If you're the kind of road warrior that likes to work with something like a Sennheiser 416, a shotgun mic, that's not going to work with this unit. You need to be using a studio condenser like the Neumann 193 that I've been using, so you have to be comfortable with taking that on the road, and you'll get some good results with it. I would love to know what you think of the review, and if you have any experience with the Isovox yourself, then I'd love to hear those as well. You can add those to the comments below if you're watching on YouTube. But that's my review of the Isovox 2. Overall, it's a thumbs up. Whether it's right for you in terms of cost, portability and the microphone that you have available to use with it is really going to be down to your personal choice. But I think they've done a pretty good job.